Hello everyone, and welcome back to Dungeon Master Horror Stories. I haven't gotten to make one of these videos in a long time. I think I made the first one in September, and I haven't been able to make one since because life has been busy, but I wanted to get back to making these videos again. So, today I'm going to talk about rolling for AC. Now that was a house rule that my friends and I used for a very long time, probably longer than we should have. Now, I got started playing D&D about 3 years ago now, and I had a run-in with a friend who I'd just made because I'd just come to college, and he said, "Hey man, I'm about to go make a Dungeons and Dragons character. You want to come with me?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, I do." So I go, and I'm with all these people who I kind of know because I've met them all a little bit before, maybe. And we're sitting there making characters, and I decide that Paladin sounds cool, so I make a Paladin. And then I hear that my friend AJ over there has got 64 some odd skill points as a rogue, and I look at my paladin and I've got 4. And I decide I don't want to play a paladin, so I run upstairs and I tell my friend, we're gonna call him Douglas, that hey, I'm playing D&D and I've got a paladin here. I know you like to play tanks. You want to play a paladin? And he goes, "Yeah, sure, I'll play D&D. Why not?" So I go back downstairs and I make a ranger and we play, and it was fantastic. But when they were teaching me the rules, they taught me a rule that I found out later was a house rule. And that was whenever you're attacked, you are to roll for your armor class. Now, typically, you would, what we would normally call take 10. You'd start with 10, and then whatever modifiers you have to your armor class, you would add them to 10, and whatever number you came up with was your armor class. Now, that became the difficulty class that the enemies would have to roll in order to hit you, right? So my friend as the dungeon master would roll an attack, adding the modifier of the attack roll to whatever monster is attacking, and then that number would have to meet my AC to hit me. Well, my friend decided that he didn't like that rule, so he was going to go with rolling for AC, and that was get rid of the 10. And now everybody rolls a d20 every single time they're attacked, and whatever number that is in place of the 10. So somebody who is attacking rolls with their attack modifiers, and someone who's defending rolls with their armor modifiers, their defense modifiers. Which sounds cool in theory, right? That kind of sounds like it makes sense. However, it has some implications. Now, let's talk about why it's kind of something cool. First of all, there's nothing wrong with house rules. There's absolutely nothing wrong with house rules. Some of the coolest things can be house rules, especially like flanking now in 5th edition, is basically a house rule. However, it's something that's been around for several editions now, and it's just a logical conclusion to come to. And a lot of people have a good time by adding flanking to their games. So there's nothing wrong with house rules. In fact, D&D as a game is just a bunch of house rules that just happen to be made by somebody who owns the rights to the title Dungeons and Dragons. So don't worry yourself too much if you have house rules. They're fantastic. They can improve the game wildly. But consider the implications and be open to criticism if your house rule doesn't work out the way you planned. Let's look at the benefits for rolling for AC. It gives players more agency in combat. It has them rolling more, which is pretty cool. Lots of people love to roll, and so a lot of my friends would defend it and say, "Well, I want to roll to see how good I'm defending." And I'm like, "Okay, that's fine." But that's pretty much where the benefits end. That's literally the only thing positive coming from it is that you're rolling more, and if you view that as a good thing, that's a positive. Here are some of the issues. Number 1, it gives players less agency in combat, and that's because I was playing a character that was heavily reliant on getting criticals on numbers that are not a 20. Now, this is rare in 5th edition. This is something exclusive to the champion, I believe, where they can get on a crit on a 19 or even an 18. And in 5th edition, a critical roll, if a high level champion just rolls an 18, they absolutely hit with the attack no matter the AC, and they absolutely deal double damage. In 3rd edition, you had to do what's called confirm a critical. And that's where you roll your attack roll again after you've gotten a critical, gotten a 20 or 19 or an 18. And then if you hit the AC again, if you met the armor class a second time, you essentially get a free attack almost. And if that free attack hits, you get to do the damage of it. With the exception of weapons that deal 3 or 4 times damage on a critical. Now, the issue with that is I played a character that would crit on a 15 because I played like a rogue with improved critical on a rapier, which already had an 18 to 20. So I was supposed to be dealing critical damage on any 15 I was rolling, pretty much, as long as I was able to confirm the critical. And the issue with that is, because my opponents were able to roll for AC, because of course the Dungeon Master rolls for AC too on monsters. And I suppose you could just take out that part of the rule, but anyway, the issue was I was rolling 15s and hitting sometimes and not hitting other times. And that if it were set AC, I would be hitting every single time I rolled a 15, which would give me more chances for criticals. Because of course I wasn't critting when the person rolling for AC was rolling a 1. I was only critting when I was rolling a 20 on my attack roll, or 15 in this case. So that's kind of part of the issue. Another issue is that I don't know whether or not I'm going to hit whenever I roll. So for example, let's say we're fighting a skeleton, and I roll an 11 for my attack roll. And my dungeon master says, you swing your sword at the skeleton, but your blade just seems to slide off and doesn't damage the bone at all. Next turn. I understand that an 11 didn't meet the armor class. I just know that because if I had, I would have been able to roll damage and I would have dealt some damage. So, now I understand, and this isn't metagaming, by the way, and I'll go over that in a second. I now understand that 11 is not good enough to hit. So, whenever I roll next time, and I roll and I see a 7, I immediately know, oh man, I missed. Sorry DM, I rolled a 7. Let's move on. Or he can say, okay, your blade slides off again, whatever. We can move forward. Now the issue, of course, comes up when I'm like, hey, I got an 11. And he goes, you hit. And I'm like, oh, hey, that's cool. Roll damage, whatever. Next turn, it comes around to me. I got a 13. Oh, sorry, he rolled too high for AC this time. Oh. Well, then I guess I'll move on then. You can go now. It's your turn now. Because then the issue comes that my roll means nothing, right? Whatever I roll, I still have to tell my dungeon master. And I guess this could be used as a tactic for building tension, but in reality, it takes the tension away from the dice and puts it on the dungeon master. And that can start to create, hostility. Because now I feel like the dungeon master's cheesing me, right? If I'm just rolling my 18s and 19s to hit, 21s and 22s and I'm missing, and then my friend over there is rolling 6s and 7s and he's hitting, I'm going to start getting frustrated at the dungeon master, whether or not it's really the dice or not. Because it seems to me like he's cheesing it in his favor. Whereas, if I'm rolling the 21s and the 22s, I'm going to hit if the AC is set. And my friend over there that's rolling 6s and 7s, we can say, oh man, your dice are screwing you over this time, man. That really sucks. And the game can still remain fun and nobody gets frustrated at anybody because it really is the dice that are screwing you over. And anyway, some of my friends argued that, well, if I'm rolling and I get a 12 to hit and I roll an 11 the next turn and miss, now I know that the monster's AC is 12 and that's metagaming. I'm like, but why is that metagaming? Is there an issue with knowing what the AC of the enemy is? Because, I mean, eventually you're going to hit them enough times that you kill them. If you did the math, you could add up the HP and you'd figure out the HP of the monster roughly. Is that metagaming? Because you can usually tell how much of a beating something needs to take before you kill it. So if you give one skeleton a beating so objectively large that it kills them, you'd expect the next skeleton to take a similar amount of beating. So calculating HP like that wouldn't necessarily be metagaming. So There's nothing meta gaming about understanding how good the defenses of your enemy are, because they're probably going to understand if you keep getting hit by something, you're going to understand that they have a pretty strong offense. And if you keep missing or you keep not dealing damage, you're going to understand that they have a pretty good defense. And knowing that number, knowing the objective number of that, doesn't change that. So even though my friend had an issue with knowing the exact number, I said it opens up crazy amounts of tactical ability for your players, right? You can now say, oh, I only need a 12 to hit, and 3.5 power attack was a huge thing, right? It was part of the fighter's repertoire of things to make them effective, right? So the idea of the power attack was you could subtract numbers from your attack to add them to your damage roll. So if something's got a low AC, you can take numbers off your attack because you're pretty sure you're going to hit them, and then do more damage. That way, fighters could just plow through what we call mooks, or things with low HP, because they could just kill them in one hit because they've got low AC. And so fighters could take care of the minions of the bad guy, while the wizard, who was using like the scorching ray, dealing tons of 12d6 damage, could focus on the boss, or the rogue can move around and focus on the boss to do sneak attack damage. Issue with power attack is it's hard to judge when's a good time to power attack, because you never know the AC of what you're fighting, so you don't know if it's a risky move or if it's a safe move. And then the consequence of that was none of our players ever used power attack. And that was unfortunate, because that meant that our fighter in one of our parties for one of our games really felt like she was useless all the time. She felt like she was just hitting stuff and not much more effectively than the rest of us, who were hitting stuff and casting spells and doing cool flurry blows or whatever the monk was doing at the time. So I eventually, in my game, because I branched off, became a dungeon master, started running a game, and I ran with the roll for AC rule for way too long. We went from level 1 to level 27 or something like that. We ran an entire 3.5 epic level campaign rolling for AC. Not to mention the other two campaigns, which both went to, I think one of them went to level 5 and the other one went to like level 18. All three of those campaigns we rolled for AC, and it just became especially at high level, when in 3.5 things are using like 5 or 6 attacks sometimes per round. You and the dungeon master needing to roll and do math, and of course the modifiers in 3.5 were like plus 20, plus 22, incrementing with each different attack is a different math. And I had one poor kid at my table who wasn't very good at math, and his turn took 15 minutes because he and I both needed to do a stack of addition or subtraction problems, just basic boring arithmetic for several minutes at a time. Slowed the game down to an absolute crawl, and it was atrocious. So my next game, in that game, I said, okay, I'm no longer going to roll for AC for monsters. I'm using set AC. If you make multiple attacks, you're using set. If I make multiple attacks on you, you're also using set AC. We're only using the roll for AC if we're making one attack in a turn. So if you use a charge. And my players were like, oh man, but I like rolling for AC. What the heck? But they thanked me, because combat, we shaved an hour off of our combat the first night that happened. Combat went way faster. And so, and of course my DM that had kind of enforced that rule and kind of taught us that rule had never really run a high level game before, or he had been in very few. And so he didn't understand. He didn't even have to think about the implications of incorporating that rule. He didn't have to think about how it was going to ruin his game or how it was going to slow down combat to a crawl, because it wasn't a problem at the time. It just became a problem whenever you were implementing it in practice later on down the road. And that's why you've got to be flexible, and you and your players have to be flexible. You have to be willing to say, hey, even if it's a rule that's in the rule book, you got to know when to identify, hey, this rule is kind of slowing down our game and isn't fun. Let's change it. And that's how good homebrew rules can come along, That's how you come up with stuff like, hey, we're teaming up on this guy and we're not being any more effective, and he's kind of being able to handle both of us. Why don't we incorporate a flanking rule? And that's how you be more effective. You know, that's how you be a more effective player and a more effective DM. All right, that's about all I have to say about that. And if you want, you can check out, I just uploaded a new submission to the Dungeon Masters Guild. You can find it here. And it's a new race called the Thunderborn. It's very cool. I highly recommend it. Give it a try if you like the idea. And yeah, please subscribe, leave a like. Love you.